I accidentally saw my girlfriend secretly meeting with my best friend, but it wasn't what I expected. I knew every expression on Jessica's face, every smile and every glance. But when I saw her with my best friend, sharing whispers and secret looks, I realized maybe I didn't know her as well as I thought. Something was going on, and whatever it was something they didn't want me to know. Jessica and I have been together for 3 years now. It's the longest and most meaningful relationship I've ever had, and I'd be lying if I said I didn't still get that happy, butterflies in my stomach kind of feeling when I look at her. She's everything I ever wanted in a partner. Smart, driven, warm, and just the right amount of quirky to keep things interesting. She's also super organized, sometimes almost too much, but in a way that made me smile more often than not. The only odd thing in our relationship has always been her dynamic with my best friend, Ilone. The two of them never exactly got along, though it was never outright hostility either. It was more like a weird sort of friction, Jessica thought. Ilone was too sarcastic and a bit rough around the edges, while Ilone would say Jessica was too serious and kind of judgy. It wasn't ever a huge issue, but the tension was always there. Quiet, steady, and unspoken. I figured we'd all just learn to live with it. Not everyone had to be best friends, right? But then, about 2 weeks ago, things started feeling strange. At first, it was little things. I began noticing the way they would actually talk to each other during group hangouts. Talk, not just exchange short sentences. I'd always been the one to bridge the gap between them in conversations, just to keep things smooth. But lately, they seemed to be having their own side chats, sharing brief moments of eye contact, even the occasional shared laugh. I brushed it off, thinking maybe they were finally learning to get along. Then came the moment that shifted everything. It was a regular Saturday. I was running errands near downtown and decided to grab something from a shop near my favorite coffee place. That's when I saw them, Jessica and Ilone, through the window of the cafe. They were sitting at a corner table, just the two of them, no one else. Their heads were close together, their body language relaxed. They weren't just tolerating each other, they were comfortable, laughing, smiling, engaged. It hit me like a sudden wave. I stood there on the sidewalk, frozen, watching them for a few seconds that felt like minutes. 100 questions swirled in my mind. Was it a coincidence? Did they run into each other and decide to catch up? Or had they planned to meet? Then, just as I was convincing myself I was probably overthinking everything, I saw something I couldn't ignore. Jessica reached across the table and gently grabbed Ilone's hand. She held it for a few seconds. Not long, but long enough. And it felt like a punch in the gut. I blinked, unsure if I was seeing it right. I stepped back quickly, ducking behind a nearby parked car before either of them could spot me. My heart pounded in my chest. My first instinct was to storm in and demand an explanation. But another part of me held back, whispering that maybe I was jumping to conclusions. Still, that moment, it didn't sit right. The rest of the weekend, I waited for Jessica to mention something, anything about seeing Ilone. Even just a casual, "Oh, I ran into your friend earlier," but nothing came. She acted completely normal, like that coffee shop visit had never happened. That silence bothered me more than I expected. I kept watching her for signs. Was she hiding something? Was it innocent and just awkward to bring up? Or was it something more? A few days later, we were curled up on the couch watching a movie, a bowl of popcorn between us. Everything seemed normal again, but then her phone buzzed on the table. She glanced at the screen, smiled to herself, and quickly typed something before placing the phone face down. That small detail didn't escape me. I tried to sound casual. "Who's that?" "Oh," she said with a shrug. "Just someone from work." She didn't meet my eyes. "Someone from work?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice light. "Yeah," she said, reaching for her water. "You don't know them?" I nodded slowly, saying nothing more. But in my chest, something shifted. But even after I tried to let it go, the unease kept creeping back in. Ever since I saw Jessica and Ilone together at that coffee shop, things hadn't felt right. Every little thing she did seemed suspicious. It wasn't anything obvious, not exactly, but it was there. Subtle signs that made my stomach tighten and my mind race. Like the way she'd glance at her phone and smile softly to herself, or how she'd mention going out with a friend without offering any names. And each time, I couldn't help but wonder, is it him? I kept telling myself I was overthinking, that I needed to trust her, but my gut didn't agree. Later that week, I finally decided to talk to Ilone. We had planned to catch a game together, just like we always did. It was supposed to be a chill night, a break from all the overthinking, but at the last minute, he texted me to cancel. "Hey, man, can't make it. Something came up. Something about the message felt distant." So I called him. He picked up after a few rings, his voice not quite as casual as usual. "You ditching me for someone more interesting?" I tried to sound playful, but even I could hear the tension in my voice. "Nah, just got stuff going on," he replied, sounding distracted. "Stuff? Like what?" I pressed. There was a pause on the line. Too long of a pause. "Just some personal stuff," he finally said. "Don't worry about it." Personal stuff? Since when did Elone keep personal things from me? We'd been best friends since high school. There weren't supposed to be secrets between us. That conversation stuck with me, and things only got worse from there. Yesterday was the breaking point. We were both invited to a big wedding for a mutual friend. Jessica came with me, of course, and Elone was already there when we arrived. From the very beginning, I could feel the tension crawling up my spine. It was subtle at first, like the prickle of unease before a storm. Jessica and Elone were inseparable. At first, I told myself to ignore it. Maybe they were just trying to get along for my sake. But every time I glanced around the room, there they were, huddled together, laughing, talking with their heads close, like they shared some private joke the rest of us weren't invited to. I tried to smile through it. I forced myself to mingle, to stay in conversations, but my eyes kept drifting back to them. With each passing hour, the knot in my chest grew tighter. By the time dinner was served and the speeches began, I could hardly focus. I was barely tasting the food, barely hearing the words being said around me. I kept watching them, whispering to each other, leaning in like they were the only two people in the room. That was it. That was the moment I couldn't take it anymore. The frustration inside me, the confusion, the anger, it all bubbled over. My heart was pounding, my breath short, and my hands were clenched into fists under the table. I stood up, walked straight over to where they were standing off to the side, and spoke louder than I intended to. "What the hell is going on between you two?" The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Their laughter died instantly. The room hadn't gone completely silent yet, but the energy around us shifted fast. Elone looked like he'd been slapped, his eyes wide and unsure. Jessica looked between the two of us, and for a moment, there was something raw in her expression. A flash of guilt, maybe. She opened her mouth to say something, I don't know what, but just then the lights dimmed. A spotlight snapped on, washing everything else in darkness. I squinted as it hit us, bright and sudden. Then, the music cut out, and a voice came over the speakers. My name. "Spencer, could you please join me up here?" I turned slowly, confused, disoriented, and then I saw her, Jessica, standing at the front of the room, behind a microphone. Her face was pale, her hands slightly shaking, but her eyes were locked on me, serious, steady, determined. I froze. My stomach dropped so fast it felt like I'd missed a step on a staircase. What was going on? Jessica stood under the spotlight, her hand reaching out, her voice gentle as she said, "Come on, please." She was gesturing for me to join her at the front of the room. Every single person had turned their head in my direction. All eyes were on me. There was no escape. Still reeling from the moment before, from the whispers, from the strange tension between her and Elone, I forced my legs to move. Each step felt slow, heavy, like walking through water. I couldn't tell if I was nervous, confused, or both. The room blurred slightly around the edges. I could feel the pressure of the spotlight on my skin and the weight of every stare on my back. When I finally reached her, she took a deep breath. Her voice trembled just a little as she leaned into the microphone. "I know this probably seems strange," she began, her eyes scanning the crowd before settling on mine. "But there's something I've been wanting to say in front of everyone who matters to me. And most importantly, to you." I couldn't speak. My heart was pounding so loudly in my ears I could barely hear her. 1,000 thoughts crashed in my head, each louder than the last. Was she breaking up with me? Leaving the country? Telling me something I wouldn't want to hear? "Jessica, just tell me what's going on," I managed to say, my voice catching in my throat. She gave me a soft, steady look. Her nerves were visible in the slight shake of her hands, but her gaze never wavered. "You're the best thing that's ever happened to me," she said, her voice clear now, even if it was filled with emotion. "I can't imagine my life without you, and I'd do anything to make you as happy as you've made me." She paused again, and I could see her chest rise and fall as she steadied herself. Then, Before I could process what was happening, she reached into her coat pocket and dropped down to one knee. My heart stopped. The air in the room went still as she opened a small, elegant ring box. Inside was a beautiful, simple band. Nothing flashy, just classic and meaningful. My breath caught in my throat. "Will you marry me?" Jessica asked, her voice strong but tender. It echoed gently in the room, hanging in the space between us like a question wrapped in hope. For a few seconds, I didn't move. I couldn't. My brain felt scrambled. Jessica, the woman I loved, the woman I had been worried about just minutes ago, was now on one knee, asking me to marry her. She had flipped everything I thought I knew about this night upside down. I had always imagined I'd be the one to propose. I had thought about how I'd do it, where we'd be, how surprised she would look. But now, she had taken the lead, and I was the one standing there stunned, caught in a moment that was bigger than I expected. I turned my head slightly and caught Elone's expression from the crowd. He was grinning like an idiot, mouthing the words, "Say something, dude!" The room was silent, waiting. Finally, I felt a laugh catch in my throat, and the words tumbled out. "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, of course, yes." The moment I said it, the entire room erupted. Applause burst out from all directions. People, cheering, clapping, even whistling. Jessica stood up quickly, her eyes wide with joy and relief, and threw her arms around me. I held her tight, my heart thudding like a drum in my chest. The applause continued, but I didn't care about the noise. I cared about her, about the fact that she had done something so bold, so unexpected, and so filled with love. I could feel my own tears stinging at the corners of my eyes. I let them fall as I pulled her in closer. She leaned back just enough to meet my gaze, her face glowing. "Surprise?" she whispered with a grin, her eyes twinkling through her own happy tears. I laughed, wiping my cheek quickly. "Best surprise of my life." And in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the questions, not the confusion, not even the spotlight. Later that night, long after the celebration had ended and the music had faded into silence, the venue had mostly cleared out. Empty glasses and crumpled napkins were scattered across the tables, and soft lighting gave the room a peaceful glow. It was just the three of us left, Jessica, Elone, and me, sitting quietly at one of the tables near the back, trying to absorb everything that had just happened. Jessica still had that radiant look about her, cheeks slightly flushed, eyes sparkling with excitement. The joy hadn't worn off, and I wasn't sure it would anytime soon. She reached over and took my hand, her fingers intertwining with mine. A soft, breathy laugh escaped her lips as she looked at me. "Okay," she said with a small smile. "So, I owe you a few explanations." I let out a dry laugh and shook my head slowly. "Yeah, you do. You nearly drove me insane, you know that?" She giggled, giving my hand a gentle squeeze. "I honestly didn't think it would mess with you that much. I thought you'd catch on sooner or later." Across the table, Elone leaned back in his chair, letting out a laugh of his own. "Catch on? This guy was convinced we were hiding some huge scandal." Jessica looked over at him with an amused expression. "You have to admit, we weren't exactly subtle. All those random coffee meetups, the vague text messages." I raised my eyebrows, still trying to wrap my head around it all. "So, just to be clear, the two of you were out ring shopping during those mysterious coffee dates?" Jessica nodded proudly. "Exactly. I had no clue what kind of ring you'd like, and I didn't want to guess. Elone offered to help, and honestly, he's got an eye for this kind of thing." Elone gave me a playful look, pretending to be offended. "Hey, I put in work, man. Hours of staring at rings and pretending to know what vintage solitaire meant." And I gave her advice on how to pop the question. "That speech?" "Yeah, I helped write half of it." I laughed, running a hand through my hair, feeling both amused and slightly embarrassed. "You want the truth? For a second there, yeah, I thought something was going on between you two." Elone gasped in mock horror, clutching his chest. "Wow, after all these years, I'm deeply hurt." Jessica giggled and leaned her head against my shoulder, clearly enjoying the drama. "It was supposed to be a surprise. You're the most thoughtful, kind person I know, and I just wanted to do something that would knock you off your feet. You deserved a moment that you'd never forget." As she spoke, I looked at the two of them, the woman I loved and the friend I trusted more than anyone. The feelings I had earlier, the confusion, the paranoia, All of it felt so distant now, almost ridiculous. I had jumped to conclusions because I hadn't seen the full picture. But now, it was all clear. I reached across the table and pulled both of them into a big, tight hug, catching them off guard. "I don't know how I got this lucky," I said honestly. "I get to marry the love of my life, and I've got the best friend anyone could. Ask for right by my side." Ilone chuckled, pretending to wipe away a tear. "Man, this is way too emotional for me. You're gonna make me cry in a banquet hall." Jessica laughed too, her head still resting lightly on my shoulder. Everything felt right. Not perfect, but exactly how it was meant to be. "So?" she said, lifting her head slightly, her voice playful again. "What do you say, fiancé?" I looked down at her and smiled, my heart full. I say, "Let's start forever." And just like that, the night felt complete. No more doubts, no more secrets, just love, laughter, and the quiet. Beginning of a new chapter.